Oh, that was interesting. Yo, what's up? What's up? We live.
What's going on?
What's
What's up?
happening? Shoot, man. It's been a couple weeks now. It feels like.
It's
More
been
than
at least 3 weeks. It's been at least
Has
for
it
me
been?
at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You've been out for 3 weeks. We did stream a week before.
Yeah, y'all streamed while I was in
in
Utah.
these streets.
Yeah. What we talked about Avatar on the last stream. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that was the last one.
Have you had a chance to see that? I didn't. I don't even. We hadn't talked about what. Yeah, you saw Avatar, right? So you hadn't. But have
We
you?
already talked about Avatar.
We talked about her.
All
Yeah.
three of us. What did we
Yeah.
do week before? Yeah, what did we do week before last?
I don't know.
Y'all did one last week. Y'all went over Quantum Mania.
That's right. That's right. That's the one we missed with
The last
we
show
weren't on.
before that day, we got to do this more often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Ant-Man. That was the last discussion.
Uncool, what's up?
Captain's log, uncool, what's happening? You wanna talk about what your feedback real quick on Ant-Man since we got you live here?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you still haven't seen it? Dang.
You
That's
wildin'.
crazy.
Good. Go see it. Don't listen to the reviews.
Yeah. Okay. Two
It's
people
worth
that
watching.
stay here came home and was like, that was a terrible movie. The worst movie ever. That's what they said.
One of them, your brother?
Nah, in-laws.
Oh. How old are
I
you?
don't know. I thought it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing. You
Yeah,
know,
I thought it was pretty.
it's always worth seeing with
I
your
feel like
own,
the end of the movie makes the whole movie pointless. Is that how it ends?
I wouldn't
I wanna-
say
Like,
that.
is this another variant Kang? I don't mind spoilers.
All right. So at the very end of the movie, something happens. He's attacked by ants and he's kind of taken down by ants, and then he's taken down by Ant-Man and the Wasp in the end. So a lot of people think he's dead. I'm under the assumption is if you don't see somebody not breathing, they ain't dead.
He kind of got sent to another dimension, is what it looked like to me.
It didn't look like
it did
he
look like he
died.
was.
Is that the Kang or is this another Kang variant?
It's just a variant.
Okay.
It's a variant of like millions, because they showed that too.
lot
in the
of-
end. Like it's a lot of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
All right. See, I gotta see Creed 3 though.
I want to see that too. I haven't seen it yet.
Creed 3.
Okay, so we have not seen Creed 3 yet because I haven't seen it either.
I didn't know you made that the thumbnail.
I did make it a thumbnail. It was the top. It was on the top of the list.
It was at the top of the list because I went in the order, like the more important topics were at the bottom because they would take longer. So Creed was gonna be a little thing because it was exciting. Get into it.
Yeah, let's get it. I mean,
All right.
we was talking about the box office
Yes.
numbers, so we'll
So-
talk about that real quick.
Creed 3 grossed over $100 million its opening weekend, and it has the largest opening for a sports film in history. Black people did that. No slaves was in the movie. Black people can be in great movies where we're not getting beat, ladies and gentlemen.
Unless it's with gloves.
Well, we were beating each other, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's there we can make movies outside of the niche that we're often put into and be successful. But we've seen that too. We've seen that trend, fortunately, in the last few years. That like you don't have to make stereotypical black films to be successful.
Absolutely. So I'm sorry, y'all. My phone is doing things. Well, since that's it for the Creed talk, would we like to name a couple topics
Might
we'd like to see?
I'll update the thumbnail after this. Yeah, let's run through the rest of the topics then.
Well, wait, before we go on to that, are there any topics that you would like to see on screen starring Black people? Now that not that we didn't know, but now that the world is seeing, you have films like Creed, you have The Woman King, of course, Black Panther is always dominating. Are there films that we would like to see with topics starring Black people that we just feel deserve screen time that don't get it.
Science fiction and
That's a good
fantasy.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
like the last, I feel like it was the last two genres that, well, technically fantasy would, Black Panther would fall into that with Marvel, but we're still,
You thinking about space sci-fi?
I'm thinking about sci-fi, like
Sci-fi?
like talking traditional, like Star Trek style, Dune, like sci-fi, science fiction. Like and like Black Panther is like that hybrid fantasy sci-fi, like Star Wars is. Like Star Wars is, it's not really hardcore science fiction, but it's not hardcore fantasy either. Like it's a nice balance because you do have that. It's set in space, and then like Black Panther, it's set in, it's a futuristic society, right? But it's not like, if we had like I said, like a Dune movie or something like Star Trek.
Who would you want to see play in it?
I don't know. I don't even know what type of film I would like to see or TV show within that. But like it wouldn't really matter to me. Like I would be more
Like a
interested in who's
sci-fi
directing
story based
and
on,
writing it.
F1. Is that the name of the racing? F1? Formula One.
Sci-fi and F1
Sci-fi?
Like imagine Formula One, but like
in space,
in the future, like in space. Like they
Pod racing.
like F1 and Tron.
Oh,
Space
it's
racing.
Tron, technically, right?
Something like Tron. Yeah, I've never seen Tron.
I can see that.
Yeah, something like Tron.
I can
Yeah,
see that.
y'all's is way, way, way different than mine. Although my idea is sci-fi too. So imagine, right? Aliens come down. It's a drama. It's not a comedy. So don't laugh at me.
What kind of aliens?
That's not what's important. What's important is we Black people, and we don't want to go outside. Everybody else, go on our rooftops trying to get the aliens' attention. Black people hunker down because we don't know what the aliens are going to do. However, a group of cousins realize Big Mama is at her house by herself, and they got to drive 5 hours to go to her house to make sure Big Mama is good.
Yo, that's a wild movie.
I just thought about like what would happen if aliens came. Like I need to make sure my family.
That's interesting.
Where are my grandmothers? Like unfortunately, I don't have my grandfathers anymore. But my grandmothers need to be with me. They need to be in the house. They need to have somebody with them. If they don't want to leave their house, because you know how old people are, I won't be in my house. I'm going to die in my house. Fine. That somebody need to be in the house with you. You can't be by yourself. Like my mom's mom, she's bound to already be in her house. But my father's mom would be stuck on the George Washington Bridge or something because she don't know how to stay home.
Mm.
So, a group of cousins got to go save their grandma from the aliens. Or just to make sure that she's safe because the world is going crazy outside and they want to make sure their grandma's safe. I feel like that's a real, like something Black people will go through.
Yeah, I can see it. It'd be an action comedy, sci-fi action comedy.
I was thinking a little bit more dramatic, a little more serious. But either way, just what's so funny though? I'm not gonna lie, it would be hard to make it not funny because
it would be.
To see Black people on screen reacting how we think they're going to react is hilarious. Like, yes, the intention to make what's the name of the movie? A Haunted House with Marlon Wayans. Yes, the intention was to make a comedy, but the funniest parts of the movie were just the truth. When that furniture fell, did y'all see that movie?
Yeah.
Furniture fell. They had the reaction that we would have. Oh no, I'm out. I'm leaving. Why would you let me come up in this house? Y'all got a ghost. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Or like when the ghost pops out for the first time, they pack up and they move instantly. That's how we would react.
Those are great movies, by the way.
Oh, the Haunted House movies. Oh, the best Cedric the Entertainer being the priest from the jail trying to perform the exorcism in the basement.
Yeah. That's your top.
That's up there. There's also another scene that I just don't want to talk about on camera, but the neighbor is the white neighbor and his wife and the other gentleman. You know what I'm talking about?
Is this when the neighbors knew his name?
No, he goes to the neighbor's house in the basement. They having like a mandingo party, and the white neighbor, is watching his wife with a group of black dudes, and it's like, yeah.
Oh wow.
Y'all don't
I don't remember that. No.
Oh, I know I didn't make that up. That happened in that movie. I did not make that up, y'all.
Dang.
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
That must have got erased from my memory banks.
It didn't get erased from mine, but it was concerning. I didn't mean to change the tone. I don't know. We're finished talking about Creed now, I guess.
Yeah. What's next after Creed?
Quantumania, I guess, is another box office convo. Quantumania has dropped off hard from the box office. In fact, it was the week after it came out, so the second weekend, it had the largest fall off from a Marvel movie, I want to say, since Captain Marvel, like from week 1 to week 2. Even
The mouth was powerful.
that's what I'm saying. Even Black Widow performed better, which I still stand by. Black Widow was not a bad movie. Black Widow just came out at the wrong time. But for Quantumania, a movie that I just feel what isn't nearly as bad as people are making it out to be. Wouldn't even call the movie bad. I'm scoring it 7.5 to 8. That's how much I enjoyed the film. What's
making people give it the bad rap?
A lot of people are saying it's too gimmicky, it's too funny, but I would argue that it's along the same lines of the other Marvel movies that we got as far as humor. I don't think it's out of the norm. I think Endgame and Infinity War gave people, like, set a new standard for what Marvel films should be. But if we're being honest, they can't make an Infinity War every, like, a few times a year. That's only gonna be something that happens every maybe 5 to 10 years. It took how many years to make that movie? Like, that's not going to happen for years. And I don't know, I feel like it's corporate sabotage, to be honest. Like, I just can't understand why people are going so hard to tear this movie down. It does not make sense. And the audience score reflects that. Usually the critic score and the audience score aren't that far apart, but it's insane. It's unfair, and word of mouth is truly powerful.
Yeah, it's not that bad a movie. I can understand people not going back to see it in theaters, because I don't think I wouldn't say it's worth seeing twice in the movie theater, but it's not like it's not something that you saw it twice.
I saw it twice and I enjoyed it. The first time I gave it a 7.5. After the second time, I bumped it up to an 8. I enjoyed it better the second time. I got to see stuff I didn't see the first time.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't see it 2 times in the theater, but like, I still don't think that it was a bad movie. Like, I enjoyed the movie. Like, for me, it really does a good job of giving you a waypoint as far as like where Marvel is headed. And like, I enjoyed it for that, because it's like, oh, okay, we have an established villain. And like I said, Kang is like, he carried that whole movie. Like, and he actually elevated I think the character, and Jonathan Majors, of course, elevated the entire cast, because there was a lot of growth with Ant-Man's character and the Wasp and his daughter. Like, there was a lot of character growth in this movie, and it has a lot to do with Kang in this whole plot. So like, seeing it, I mean, I think it's definitely worth going to see in theaters. And like, to Monty's point, like, the audience score is the telltale sign. Like, the audience is pleased with the movie. I can understand, though, why the week after week drop off is there, because I don't think there's enough there to make you go back to see it a second time. Not for everybody. Yeah, hardcore Marvel fans, I could totally see them. Like my man Mike Porter, I'm pretty sure he's seen it every weekend. But like, you know, for me, I thought it was a really, really good movie, and it did it established King the way I wanted King to be established. And so like that's kind of sort of what I was looking for. I wanted a Ant-Man movie that felt like the other two, and I needed them to establish King properly. And that's, to me, they accomplished those goals. So I was satisfied.
I disagree a little bit with what you're saying, Coop. I agree that there might have been not as much of a push for people to see it a second time, but I believe people who would have seen it at all did not go see it because of these bad reviews. I just feel like there's just a significant number of people who would normally go see any Marvel movie that just left it alone because of them. And JBM, just to give you a little info, like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever was a very singular story, right? That story didn't really leave Wakanda. It was about the relationship between Wakanda and Talokan. That's it. That it didn't really branch out further than that too much. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania literally set up the rest of the MCU. Like, this movie is preparing us for something that's coming. We can now see a clear vision for what's next. You didn't see that in Wakanda Forever. It was just its own story. But I feel like this movie is a little too important for this. Just like I don't know, like now I see a clear vision for where Marvel is headed next. I didn't see that with Black Panther. Not to say that Black Panther needed to do that, but it's just to tell how important the story is to the current MCU timeline. Like I don't know. It just seems wildly unfair.
So what's the vision?
I mean, you see that Kang is a villain that's going to be around. Like the end scene, you have all of the Kangs like together. There's millions of them in a great hall, like just to be excited to be together and to come up with a plan. That's a huge problem.
And then we know, and we also know from Loki that He Who Remains basically said that all the other Kangs destroyed the multiverse. And like it was him who had to like put it back together, fix it so that, and then create the one timeline, and you get a real glimpse of like how chaotic these other variants are. Like the way they establish Kang as a threat in this movie is very like strong. Like this is a very different type of villain that they're going to have. It's not, you can't compare him to Thanos, and I thought that was good because it's like I don't know how they're going to deal with this, because this dude exists across every single timeline, and he doesn't look the same. That's another thing. Like his variants, some of them look like, you know, Jonathan Majors, but others look wildly different. There were creatures that were King. Like this is a wild, like it's a very comic book-esque movie. Like it felt like the comic books. It felt like a proper representation of King on all of his variants. And like I talked about it on the previous episode, but that juxtaposition between Kang and Reed Richards, because those are the two opposites like of the same coin. Like to me, the movie also, as a Marvel fan, like it just establishes like, yo, when we get this Fantastic Four movie, the importance of that movie plus getting a Reed Richards is going to be key, because they need Reed Richards to stop Kang. Like they're going to need him because they don't have Tony Stark. Like Tony Stark, Reed Richards, like you're going to need a very intellectual mind to stop Kang, because he's not the brute force that Thanos was, but his intellect and like the way he's able to create empires overnight, essentially, because that's kind of sort of what you see in this movie. And like he's a very, very real threat to the MCU and into what's left of the Avengers.
So here's the way I was explaining it to my brother about how big of a deal Kang is. Imagine like us, let's just say we're in a multiverse, right? Imani in every single universe is currently about the same exact time. We were born at the same time. We're existing in the same timeline, and we're not aware of each other. Now imagine if I not only could time travel, but I also am aware and can communicate with the other versions of myself, and I'm freaking evil and crazy. So instead of just existing in his timeline in each universe, he has put different versions of, well, I should say, I keep saying him as one person, but it's really a group of them. Imagine that every single universe has a different version of Kang that existed at a different time, in different kingdoms, in different areas, probably even different planets, during important times of whether it's like war, famines. He's kind of like at the center of everything. And now we're seeing like the fruits of all of that. We're going to see that now all of these Kangs that are existing at different times within different universes are coming together for something.
And then on top of that, like in the comics, like this, the Kangs would get together anytime they fought an Avenger. If they lost, they would come together and figure out which one of them beat the Avenger and how they beat them, and then like basically
go back and
improve whatever tactic that they use to defeat that one specific Avenger in that timeline, to go back and beat them in their timeline. So like there's a shared knowledge, like they come, it's not just like this is like the United Nations of Kang basically, and like they're there to share ideas and figure out the best ways that they can conquer a timeline. Like,
dang, the body of Kang.
Yeah, whereas like in the Reed, the Council of Reed is basically the antithesis of that, because Reed Richards is the same thing. He goes and finds all of his variants, and you see that in Multiverse of Madness to a degree. It's a small, like they kind of hint at it with Reed Richards, but like he has his own council of Reeds that he goes and, okay, how do we make our timeline better? Like how do we make sure that there's like, you know, peace and justice across the time continuum and things like that. So like, and he's the only other, to my knowledge, he's the only Avenger that does that has their own council where they could frequently convene with one another to figure out like, and that's why he's the antithesis to King, as well as, and I think Von Doom also does it as well. But like, that's kind of what is established in this movie, which is why I think it's a very important movie to watch, because it's not, you really get to see just how powerful Kang is. Like you really did see him on full display and how much of a threat he is, and the fact that, you know, yeah, you can beat him in one timeline, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's defeated, because also all the other variants watch other timelines, so they can see what happened. So like they can see what happened in the quantum realm. That's something else that is also implied in this movie. Like the other Kangs were watching
the quantum realm.
He was banished by the other Kangs.
What
like, imagine there's millions of Kangs, and this particular one was so bad that they all kicked him to the curb.
Yeah, basically, he was like they. Although, so all of them are conquerors, right, of their timelines, and they looked at him and was like, "Yo, you are the worst," and they collectively banished him to the quantum realm.
Just because he was the weakest link?
No, he was the strongest.
The strongest one, and he was probably trying to conquer them all. He was probably trying to conquer different versions of himself. They didn't necessarily explain exactly what he did to them, but they did stress that this particular Kang was a threat to the other Kangs, and therefore he needed to go.
And if I had to theorize, I think that Kang, the one that we see in Quantumania, is He Who Remains that we see in Loki. Which is why I don't think he dies. I think he goes to some other dimension, like, because this whole confrontation does have an effect on him, and it would make a lot of sense if he is that variant that we see at the end, because he is supposedly the one that beats all the other Kangs.
I didn't think about that. Also, this is a thought as to maybe why some people had an issue with the movie. Remember how after we saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we all had a new appreciation for WandaVision. Not that I didn't respect Loki, but Loki is way more important now, the show. significantly important.
Very significant.
Also, What If is a bit too, because What If and Loki do a great job of explaining the multiverse. So Loki is more so focused on time, how time works in the multiverse, and how if you manipulate it, it can have negative effects. While What If can show what those negative effects will be if there are different, like what could happen in different multiverses if there's some negative things that happen. This movie is a product of that. Like without seeing those, I do question whether or not people who are not Marvel heads, if they would receive the movie the same way we would. And I would not be surprised if that maybe could bite Marvel in the butt a little bit, because there's no way anyone can properly understand the timelines without seeing Loki and What If. I just refuse to believe that. Not to say that they would not enjoy the movie, but they probably wouldn't have the level of comprehension that we would have because we've seen them.
Yeah, and I need to rewatch the end now because of my theory. Because I just thought about something that I think happened. What happened at the end of Loki when He Who Remains died?
The timeline blew up.
But what was his reaction to it? Because wasn't he very calm about it?
He was, and then he said, "I'll be seeing you."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the
I think that
timeline
because
was literally in pieces after that. You could like see branches going haywire.
And you can actually, I think you see part of that happen in real time in Quantumania in a flashback when he's banished. Like, if you remember that scene with his ship crashing, it looks exactly like how the timeline, like how that it was that like the white light from the time streams breaking off from the main continuum. It had that a very similar lighting effect to that, and then he crashed into the quantum realm.
If I can give one more spoiler, the Uncool pointed this out to me. At the beginning of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, what's Ant-Man's real name? The character's name. I'm gonna bring for
John Walters.
What?
I don't know.
What did you say? What name did you say?
Oh man, what is?
I said John Walters.
Well, in the beginning of the movie, somebody in the comments, please tell me. I'm having a brain fart just like last time. He's like walking down the street in San Francisco, happy-go-lucky, chilling. You know, life is all good. He's a dad. He's in a great relationship, and there's no problem, right? And then, of course, that all goes downhill, and they got to fight Kang. Scott Lang, thank you. Scott is walking down the street in San Francisco, happy. Everybody's recognizing him. His life couldn't be any better, right? Then, of course, things go downhill. He has to fight Kang. At the end of the film, after he thinks he's defeated Kang, and I'm going to say that because I don't believe that Kang is gone. He's walking down the street again, like everything is good. And he's like, is everything all good? And he's like, yeah, everything's perfect. So he's walking down the street, happy-go-lucky. The Uncool said everything in the background was green and purple, like Kang's suit. He said everything in that second scene looked like Kang. I did not notice that, but he did.
Most interesting.
So, JBM, I would encourage that you watch the movie.
Yeah.
I don't understand all of the negative hoopla. I feel that it's unfair. I could understand, let's just say that, you know, they gave it a 60, a 65. I could understand that. But below a 50, I think that's just disrespectful and unfair. There's just, I think, being harsh just to be harsh. Like, it's almost cool to give a negative review.
To me, it's not any worse than any of the two previous Ant-Man movies.
I think it holds itself up very well. And y'all know,
yeah,
first Ant-Man was in our top 10 for quite some time. So
yeah, it to me, like, it does a really good job of balancing the character and the levity of the Ant-Man movies and like what we appreciate about Ant-Man in that whole in his saga thus far, and just builds on it. And actually they add a really good villain that doesn't get watered down to fit into the story. Like he is just as imposing as I expected him to be, and they had to figure out how to beat him. And it took a lot. It wasn't like it was quite a battle, I will say.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely go check it out.
It's worth it.
But
call me the Ant-Man defender.
Speaking of trilogies,
you want to get right into it? I figured you want to talk about Mando. You don't want to.
All right, you know what? Let's get into we got Last of Us and Mando on the docket as well.
Well,
are y'all caught off on Last of Us?
Yes.
Yeah. The best adaptation on TV.
Gotta be.
Facts.
Also, Ellie showed out. I was screaming at the TV this last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great episode. And it was like, this is like must see TV. This is fantastic. Like this is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. It's going to win awards.
It better. I didn't want to watch this week's episode because I knew from the trailer that it was going to stress me out, and I was just like, Mrs. Cooper. I actually was watching it earlier today. I did not finish it. I saw the stuff about Will Smith, and then I saw about the first 40 minutes. I have about 30 minutes left of it. But he said what he had to say.
I liked it. It was good.
I haven't seen it yet.
It was better than his previous Netflix special. His previous Netflix special was a little too political and not enough funny.
Was that the one called Tangerine or something?
Tambourine, yes.
Tambourine, yeah.
Tangerine.
Yeah, Tambourine. It was good, but it was not what I was expecting from Chris Rock. I always expect him to knock it out the park comedically, and that was a little bit more spoken word, a little bit more social action, a little more civil rights. Not that that's bad, that just wasn't the performance that I was expecting. So I like this one a lot better. I enjoyed it more. I'll say that. I won't say I liked it better. I'd say I enjoyed it more. It was a little bit more, I was laughing. I was laughing at the store.
Yeah, every joke hit in this one.
Yeah.
Every joke hit.
Oh, and shout out to Netflix. I got to watch like the tail end of it, but I heard that there were no streaming issues. It was completely
wasn't it? It was live, right?
It was Netflix's first live show on Netflix ever. Netflix hosts a lot of live things on their YouTube channel, but they have never had a live program on Netflix, and they killed it.
That's what's up. That's interesting. Like, see what they do with that.
If they put some boxing on there, because I'm still not gonna pay for pay-per-view.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Doing sports.
I would like them to put some fights on there. And then also, now that we know that that's doable, every single comedian ever needs to have a special now. Sorry, if they could do 52 comedians, one every weekend for the next 3 freaking years now, because it's as simple as have a show. All the comedians have to do is have a camera, and they could do their show from anywhere. It's not like a big production. Oh, I'm going to go on tour and I have to choose this particular show to film, and then we're going to edit it, or maybe we're going to have to film multiple shows and put it all together. You get one night, one chance to just kill it.
They could even make a genre, just call it live comedy night. You just get live streams of comedians at these nightclubs. That'd be dope.
And just imagine, like, I would like Eddie Murphy, I feel like would do something like that. Not everybody wants to do a special, but a live show streamed around the world, that's a whole nother level.
Is he back on tour? I know he was gearing up for it before like the pandemic.
I think he did say he was going to do something. I'm going to tell y'all, that movie with Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy on Netflix, the one with Lauren London, that was not it. Did y'all see that?
I remember you mentioned that.
It was not like, it was cute. The more I think about it, the more I did not like that.
Yeah, it felt. Every trailer I saw for it didn't move me.
I'm just, how you gonna have Eddie Murphy in the movie and he's not even funny?
Like, it seemed real pedestrian. Like I like none of the comedic bits that they tried to inject in the trailers. None of those landed for me, and it felt. I don't know. It just feels like I don't know about this one. Like, this feels like a paycheck, but
Yeah.
I don't know about it. I don't know about it. I don't know about it.
But what were we talking about? Last of Us. Oh,
Last of Us.
all right. What was I about to say? I did not want to watch the episode because I knew from the trailer that it was going to stress me out. And I just have this thing. I was like, yo, older men and a young girl, it's going to be some weird, creepy shit. And excuse my language, I'm sorry, y'all. And it absolutely was. And I didn't watch it until last night because I knew it was going to stress me out. When I tell you, I was screaming at the TV, screaming. And I'm very sad the next week is the season finale. Have y'all seen the movie Zombie?
Oh man, that's tough. I didn't even think about that.
Next week is the season finale. There's only one more.
Have y'all seen what happened? Get ready.
I'm nervous. Have y'all ever seen Zombieland?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in Zombieland, they have the rules about like what to do, and number one rule was double tap. That might have been the second rule, but double tap. Ever since then, like that's in me now. Like if you are trying to take something out, if something is trying to get you, and you hit them once, go back and hit them again. Every single horror movie, any movie where somebody is being attacked, they don't double tap. And it's like a thing that they don't do that, and it stresses me out. So in this past episode, when Ellie hit that man, I was like, Ellie, don't stop, keep going. Now she went a lot longer than I would have. She did not stop, but I was very proud.
She like two deep breaths.
You know what's wild? I think they even tell you that in the armed forces. I think they tell soldiers to double tap just to make sure that they're dead, because a lot of people can play dead, and it's like,
yes,
well, hell, if the soldiers double tap, humans, like, I'm damn sure double tapping some monsters, zombies. Like, what?
Every single show they don't do it. They don't do it, and then I'm just like, what? He's gonna get back up, and then he's gonna bite you, and then boom, and it happens every time, like clockwork.
Every single time, they always play dead, and it's like, man, you can afford to put a couple more in them.
Hit him over the head with a rock. Do something, whatever it takes.
But yeah, that whole what I really loved about it in the end was like and they talk about it at the end of the episode, but the whole time you're thinking, oh, Joel's gonna show up and he's gonna save the day. He doesn't. Like, Ellie basically has to get out of the situation herself. But when he does show up, it is like probably the most important time. Like, the timing couldn't be better. Like, she needed him to be there in that exact moment, and he was like, and it was so, I was like, this is not how I expected this reunion to go, but I loved it because it was like, this makes having seen what she had to go throughout that whole episode, and at the end with crazy cannibal priest pastor dude, like,
yeah,
that was wild.
He smacked that girl and said, you have a father and you need to respect him. I said, oh, damn. Oh, damn. Oh, Ellie ain't safe. Oh, I was stressed out in the house. I was stressed out.
Hey, that's funny.
What did that didn't stress y'all out?
Out of the chair. That was crazy.
No, I was, because I was like, I was literally sitting like facing my, like, I was right in front of my TV. Like, I don't usually sit that close to my TV, but I was watching that and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, that was intense. Like, that was intense. That was probably the most intense episode so far to me. Like, everything else, it was kind of like, all right, I know something bad's about to happen. This whole episode was like, oh man, that thing was dragging. Like, and it felt appropriate though. Like, it really got you into that whole situation, and like, you're like, man, I don't know how she's gonna get out of this. Like, this is crazy, because it's like, it's no like hero moment, like, that's not gonna happen. Nobody's just gonna show up and just like come swooping in and save the day. Like, like, those post episode breakdowns are like some of the best breakdown. Like, it's just fantastic. Like, and you see why the show is so good, because of all the thought and consideration that they made writing and directing the sequences, like, you know, how they think about like where, you know, the camera is going to be, like what they need to change, um like what minor tweaks they need to make from the game script to the movie script or the show script so that it has the same impact for everybody, because it is important that, yeah, this is an adaptation and people have played the game before, but everybody needs to have moments like where they don't really know what's going to happen, or something happens that like everybody can appreciate even if you've uh played the game or played or, you know, read the books. Like, think most of the time when they make those type of changes and adaptations, they don't work. But in this show, it seems like they work every single time. Like everything feels, if like it feels like a video game, but at the same time, it feels like a it you can see the changes in the story and where they make tweaks and changes so that it plays better in live action versus like you having those. And that's to me, I think that's always been an issue with the video game adaptations. Like from a player standpoint, like you have so much control over the actions of the characters on screen or whatever character that you're controlling, that when you see it on TV or on a movie, like they're not necessarily making the same decisions that you would have made as a player, or the story isn't playing out the same way you remember it playing out on in the video game. But I think a lot of that too has to come with how far along video game storytelling has come, because it is very cinematic now. Like, it's modern video games play like you could put most of these scripts up against any TV show or movie that's out today, and it would probably they could win some of the same awards. Like you could nominate some of these video games in the same like Emmy and Oscar categories as movies and television, and they would probably beat out a lot of competition. Like, that's how far along these stories have come. Because like we were talking about this JVM about Ghost of Tsushima, like that game is so good, I don't want to finish it. Like,
You haven't
you know,
finished
no, I kind of don't want to finish it because the game is that good. Like, the story is that good. Like, you can't.
Yeah, you just want it to last forever.
Yeah, like the ending of it is kind of like you can't replay the game for the first time again. And the story is so good and so well crafted, and you spend so much time with these characters now. Like, it is very much um built for TV. Like, TV and video games have a lot more in common now than they've ever had, and definitely more so than movies, because you don't get to spend as much time with characters in movies as you do with TV shows and video games. That's why, like, I think that's why this show works so well, because the story, the showrunners and the video game developers did a really really good job of writing these characters and these stories, and like they found common ground to make this work on TV. And like, you know, it's really set. It is the gold standard for video game adaptations now. Like, it's, I mean, hell, it's much better than the Witcher. I thought the Witcher was like the gold standard. Like, this is The Last of Us is now the gold standard. Like, it by far and away is much better than anything that we've ever gotten as far as video game adaptation goes.
the
Yeah,
bar is sky high now.
Super, super.
And
And I think
it's not just video game adaptations. Like, just the only zombie show I can compare it to is The Walking Dead, and this is just one season. The writing on The Walking Dead is lackluster compared to this. Like, to the
yeah,
point where I'm so thankful The Walking Dead came out when it did, and that it's about to end now, because they can't compete with this.
no, not even its best seasons can compete with this season.
No.
It's not even close. It's not close. Not even close at all. Like,
Also, if I may add to the point you made earlier about Ellie needing Joel, you know, at the moment she need her, I feel like that scene is a blessing and a curse, because Joel opened himself up to her in a way that he hasn't opened himself up since his daughter passed, and that's
yes,
amazing and beautiful. But at the same time, Ellie just grew up. Ellie just had quite the rude awakening and became 10 times more independent. than she was previously. I agreed with everything the pastor said to her about her being violent. Like Ellie gave psychopath when the show started. I was like, what kind of little girl is this? She is insane. And yes, her relationship with Joel grew, but also she kind of reached a new level of I have to take care of me than before. So, it's kind of like great. Now he's feeling like, this is his child. He has to care for her. But this little girl just grew up real hard. She literally was about to be eaten by cannibals. Also, I'm sorry. That eating them people was an excuse. Elliot's character is how old? 14, and her first time hunting, she killed a deer. Meanwhile, these people are acting so weak that they got to eat other people. They ain't even try for real. Like,
what's crazy about that though? Like,
I just not gonna eat. I'm not eating people.
But okay, so going back to that point, right? So that whole prayer scene at the beginning, and I guess it's the guy is reading the pastor's reading Revelations, and don't they eat after that? Because he slaps the girl, and then
they were eating people. That was
no. They were she was eating her father. She didn't realize it. Like that. I realized that after the show was over. Like I was like, "Yo, wait a second."
Oh, was that?
Yeah, like so. You remember at the beginning,
I thought it was the last of their rations they were eating.
No, yeah, that's what they told everybody. They're feeding people, other human beings that have died, like other people who were in the camp when they die. They don't bury the dead. Like they've actually been feeding them secretly. What's his name? James and David were the two characters.
I think so.
They're the only ones. I think it seemed like at the end they implied that they were the only ones that knew that they were serving.
A small number of people knew because the guys who carried the horses, they had known because they took the horse where the other bodies were hanging.
Yeah. So like nobody basically eating at the table knew that they were eating other people.
Except for him, and he was eating it willingly. He knew he was eating people. Also, you saw how big and juicy his plate was.
And also, I was wondering why the audio was so keyed in on them scraping the bottom of the plate during that scene. I was like, it sounded really eerie, but I was like, why would they do that? That comes full circle at the end because she was eating her, like the girl was eating her father and didn't even know it.
Dang.
They told him it was venison. It was not. It was people. That was man flesh. I was like, yo, that is crazy.
Y'all see the Big Piece of Chicken episode where Everybody Hates Chris, where the dad
he did about it, the stand-up joke.
In one of the episodes of Everybody Hates Chris, Chris eats the big piece of chicken. Then his father comes home from work, sits down at the table, and has to pick up this. Terry Crews is huge. He picks up this little baby. It looked like a Cornish hen leg, and is trying to bite it because they did not save the big piece of chicken for him. When I tell you, this pastor was eating himself a nice big serving of food. Meanwhile, everybody around him is starving. Like that wasn't some leader stuff. That was some dictator stuff right there.
Yeah.
So I'm your father now.
Oh man. Okay.
Any thoughts? Before we go, any thoughts about next week? Do y'all know what's gonna happen?
I don't know what the heck's gonna happen.
I know what's gonna happen, but
Don't tell me. Never mind.
What's your perspective though of having played the video games?
It's perfect, man. It's like the key moments from the game they kept consistent in the live action. Like that Ellie moment at the end, that was in the game. Her being behind bars was in the game. The whole building burning down, that was in the game. A lot of it is just spot on.
Yeah, and it feels like it because like I said, like I can tell the video game moments and the way they use the camera feels like
beats from the game they kept in the adaptation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people who may not be familiar with like how like current modern day video games play. Like these cameras are very cinematic, so when you're going through cutscenes, it feels like it's a TV show. Like it feels, and it just adds to the drama and the suspense to a lot of these video games. And so all of these cutscenes basically lead into moments where you as the player has to make a decision a lot of times because there's a dialogue involved. And often, not all the time, but like sometimes you do get dialogue options and you get to pick what it is, how the character is going to respond in certain moments. And like these sequences are key. And like sometimes like you know, I'll play through a game one time and then I'll go back and play through it, but I know like more or less how I'm going to respond, or maybe I have an idea of like how I want to like respond to certain situations. So my responses will be quicker. Like I've already pre-picked basically the response. And so like when you can, you know, quickly select your dialogue options and it flows seamlessly with the cutscenes, like it does feel like a TV show. It's crazy, and it's like I don't understand. Like it's hard for me to understand like how they get these adaptations so wrong, because it's like, yo, they're giving you everything in these video games these days. Like it shouldn't be that hard to adapt, because it if you would just play through the game and see how this game is played, you would easily key in on all the key story moments and realize like, yo, this is a very compelling story that they have here.
Yeah,
Like any changes that we make need to be minor, basically only because certain things just have to be adapted to live action and how, you know, live action film and TV, like in TV works. And you know, you're dealing with real actors, you're not dealing with animated characters. Like you gotta certain scenes you're gonna have to get stunt doubles. Like certain sequences you're gonna have to change, like, you know, camera angles maybe slightly here and there just because, you know, physical reasons. And but like it shouldn't be major changes to certain characters and certain moments from these adaptations. Like in my opinion, like the video game should be easier to adapt than a book is, because you have all the visuals, you got all the story elements, everything is there for you. Like it's
yeah.
I can't really understand how they've struggled so much. And it really comes down to them just not playing the games. Like that's, I don't know how else
so
you do
Last
that.
of Us, they kept the showrunner, they kept the creator on board.
Yeah.
Neil
Yeah.
Druckmann, super talented dude. Like
And
he was head of all of it. So
and his feedback in those post credits like shows you like how involved he was in the whole process. Like they relied on him, they trusted him, they got his input and feedback, and like it was a clear collaboration there between the writer and Neil on how the story was going to play out on the big screen. And like if they made changes, they would talk to him about it and like, you know, get his sign off on it, and or get his input and feedback, and like just make make the product better. And you know, it paid off.
That has to be important. Like another adaptation I'll think about where the creator is as involved as Game of Thrones. There has to be a huge correlation between having the creator involved in the process to allow their vision to come on screen. Nobody is going to get it right better than they can.
Right.
Like, of course, they have to work with a team in order to do it, but that's the best way to do it. Seeing someone else's story being told by other people, it's never going to be the same.
And that's also like, to me, there's another difference, right? Like you don't see George R.R. Martin in a lot of those episode breakdowns for Game of Thrones talking about like the collaboration. Like, is he in any of those?
No, but he's writing the show.
But that's what I'm saying. Like it's.
I think he was on some of them.
I think he's in a few of them in the earlier. I think in the seasons where
things are
books,
good.
Yeah, basically where the books are adapted. What's that, like the first 5 seasons, 6 seasons or whatever?
First 6.
I think he's in some of those episodes, but he's not as involved in these post-credit scenes as Neil Druckmann is. Like Neil has been in every single one of these episodes talking about how him and Craig, because Craig also wrote the Chernobyl. He worked on Chernobyl. So like, I mean, you can kind of you see his influence in this as well. Like it, I think that that's just like a perfect partnership between those two because like I can see Craig's influence because I've seen Chernobyl, I've seen his work, and then I've not played this game, but like from what you're telling me, like you can, I mean, the story has basically been consistent from the video game to this adaptation. So Neil has had a lot of input and influence as well. So overall, I'm like, clearly this is the gold standard. This is the bar. The bar is set.
Yeah.
Before we go, are there any video games that you all would love to see adapted into a TV show or film?
Dead Space.
Elder Scrolls. I would love a TV show on Elder Scrolls. Talk about rich in lore and history. Like that's definitely something that somebody like HBO would have to handle that. Honestly, I don't trust anybody else with Elder Scrolls because there's too much lore in Elder Scrolls. Because I mean, Elder Scrolls goes back to the 90s. Like you're talking about like 30 some years of content for Elder Scrolls. Like it's a well established world. It could easily be messed up if they don't have the right people involved on a show like that. But it could be absolutely fantastic if they get it right.
I would root for It Takes Two. It's a lot more positive, a lot more lighthearted. It would probably be like a family show, but it's crazy cool. And I just loved how it's a partner game. You and your partner have to work together, and it would be dope to see that on screen.
That'd be cool. I never played the game.
I did. It was difficult. My hand-eye coordination is not where it's supposed to be, so that's why I haven't finished it yet. I hit through about like maybe 30 minutes at a time.
Is it like Fall Guys or something like that?
No. So It Takes Two. The story for It Takes Two is about a couple whose marriage is essentially falling apart. They want to get divorced, and their daughter falls asleep, I guess, and kind of like cries into a book called The Book of Love. And the Book of Love turns the mother and the father into little clay puppets, and they have to work together to transform themselves back into life-size people to go back to their daughter. So, and they get really small. So the game is just about them trying to travel through their home. So they're really tiny. So they're like inside of a tree working with squirrels. They're getting attacked by hornets. They're in their garage that has a whole bunch of old vacuums and stuff that's trying to attack them. So it's just them trying to, but they have to work together. Working together is the important part because they have not been working together, and that's why their marriage is falling apart. They have to work together to bring it back.
What game was that?
It is the creator made it about him and his relationship with his wife and their child. But it's
oh wow,
freaking cool. It's really cool. But it is, I'm sure you could play by yourself, but it is really, really dope to play with a partner.
So the way you describe it, that sounds like a Pixar movie.
I think so too. But the only thing is,
that sounds right up their alley.
So much happens because, like I said, it is a video game. I would prefer that it would be a show. There's so many things you have to go through, but at least if they could just do one part of it, that would be cool. Like there's a sequence where you have to go into a tree and squirrels are trying to direct you to go get something that you need, but this tree is infested with hornets. So you have to survive and kill the hornets. You got to kill the queen hornet in order to get through. It definitely gives Pixar vibes. I wouldn't want them to just pick one small part. I would want them to do the whole thing. But if they had to. But yes, it's a family, definitely would be family friendly. Family friendly fantasy film.
I'd watch it.
You should play it. It was good.
Also, Uncool said Metal Gear Solid. Absolutely. That's one of the best stories in gaming.
Yeah, there's a lot because I've been sitting here thinking about like all the video games that could be adapted. It's a lot to choose from. Metal Gear is another one because you still have to be careful with because that also goes back 20 plus years of content for Metal Gear. Final Fantasy is another one that's like there's a lot of content. You would have to be really careful with how you handle that property because you got a massive fan base for Final Fantasy.
Shoot.
Assassin's Creed was handled poorly. Assassin's Creed would actually be a very great TV show if you had the right people involved, because it's a interpretation of real historic events. Like these assassinations that happen in the games are real. Like they actually happened in real life. And so like, you know, it's what's in the Ghost of Tsushima, it would be a fantastic adaptation. Red Dead Redemption, like that would be fantastic. Like that, I mean, Rockstar, you could argue almost any Rockstar game could be adapted into a movie or a TV show. Like,
shoot,
man,
I'd like to see Jedi Fallen Order.
Jedi Fallen Order be a fantastic adaptation. Like,
they'll do it.
It's a lot.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't know about that. I don't know if they would do that.
There. Star Wars, they like the vision.
Yeah, it would.
If
they would have to get that studio involved heavily in the direction of that, and like just have like a Dave Filoni or somebody oversee, but like they would need to be the ones that were primarily in charge of that story. Like if you get somebody else like to come in, I wouldn't trust it. I would not trust it.
I hope the world takes notice to how Last of Us was handled, because it's insane and it can be done. I don't think what they've done, not to tell them that it's not difficult. I know that it took a lot of work to do this, but it takes a lot of work to make anything. This is just the right path, and everybody else needs to follow it. But
yeah,
mentioning Star Wars. Oh.
Yeah, they've got to. Yeah, before we segue into that, like they just got to respect the creative talent on the video game side, because it has TV and film have to realize that video games have caught up with them as far as storytelling goes and have passed them in many ways. Like they
have whole roles dedicated to storytelling. And
yeah, like I mean, these people have these studios, these games have entire conventions dedicated to them, and like put on by the fan base and these developers. Like, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like it is as profitable as film and TV is. Like, so yeah, like you can't just treat this like it's not just anything. It is a modern form of entertainment that many people, several generations now, have grown up with, and basically play more video games than they do watch TV or movies. So like you gotta respect it. I know for a fact, like me speaking perfectly, I play way more video. I spend way more time playing video games than I do watching TV and film. And I work in the industry, but it's still like, like that there's years of my time spent in the video game, because it's such a the stories, like I said, it's a big part of why it's so captivating. Now, Star Wars Mandalorian season 3. If you haven't, yeah, second episode chapter 18. Chapter 17 came out last week. I did put out a short on chapter 17. It was a 60-second, or 45-second, I think, recap of the entire episode. It's on the YouTube channel. Check it out if you haven't seen that yet. I will get the second one up probably sometime this week, before the next episode comes out. I can't make any promises. I got some things happening this weekend that are kind of pressing, way more important. But yeah, episode 2, chapter 18, fantastic setup.
Can I just say, before we get into it, that I was thoroughly disappointed in Bo-Katan. I understand completely that her dream fell apart and she is not in control anymore.
I don't even understand that part.
But if she don't at least get up and change her clothes and take a shower, the fact that she was sitting on the throne in the first episode and we see her again in the second episode in the same exact spot looking just as miserable, she
had a blanket on the side of her. You saw that?
That she's just sleeping there. She's just sitting on the throne. She's not moving. Girl, get up. Take care of yourself. Go wash your face. Move your part to the other side. Do something. I was thoroughly disappointed. That's all. I just had to get that off my chest. I was just like, if you don't. Side note, I don't know if this is because I'm a Black woman and just as Black people, we don't really get the chance to just chill like that. Like, okay, my dream didn't come through, but somebody got to feed these kids. Like, that's just, I guess, how Black people think. We always have something to do. We don't have the energy to just sit down on a throne and be sad. Girl, get up. And that being said, maybe it's nice that Bo-Katan has the time and the energy to, think about her feelings and to wallow in her feelings. But also, girl, get up. That was depressing. She was depressing me through the screen. Take a shower. She hasn't washed. She's been staying right there. The droid is worried about her. He's all nervous to come talk to her. She needs a friend.
Hey, yeah. It's definitely not a character-driven show. So, yeah, we won't see all the realism we expect to see with Bo-Katan.
Yeah, I mean, her character, let me think how long she's been in a constant state of war for almost 30 years.
I want
Probably
to know
longer than that.
The people with her left.
That's what I'm like. She's going through, her character's going through quite a lot. Like,
they were with her before she had the Darksaber.
She never had it.
Not really.
Then she said she left him because she didn't have the Darksaber.
They left her because she didn't have the Darksaber.
Right, but she never had the Darksaber.
Well, she was trying to get it, and then when
Mando's story, she hadn't had it yet.
When Mando got it, it was like a wrap, and she wasn't gonna fight him for it. And he tried to give it to her, but that's not how it works. And I guess she respected Mando enough that she did not want to kill him for it. And I mean, I guess that would be against Mandalorian creed. You can't just kill somebody for power. So essentially, they turned on her after that.
Yeah, you definitely can. That's not against the creed. You have to defeat whoever is the wielder of the Darksaber. You don't have to kill them though, but you can defeat them. Oftentimes, so that the power transfers by way of death. But because Mandalorians are not going to just give up easily in a fight. Their whole culture, creed, and identity is built on warfare. So like they're not going to just roll over. But yeah, her characters. So even before the Clone Wars began, I'd imagine she's probably been fighting since she was like a child, maybe in the single digits, probably like 8, 9, 10 years old. Like, so, and I think by now it's been, I think she's probably in her 50s in real time, and she's not known anything but war at this point. She's lost her entire family. She's lost her sister. She's lost her home planet. Like that fell under her watch. It was glassed by the Empire while she was the ruler. Like, so I can, but the problem is, like, unless you've seen like literally all of the Clone Wars and Rebels animated TV shows, you would not really know her because she's a character from animation. Like, and then she's also got a few comics out, but like they don't really do a good job of fleshing out the backstories of these characters that they introduce on screen for the first time, because they've appeared in other mediums, but it's a lot of times it's a lot of people's first time, because a lot of people don't watch the animated shows. So like it would be nice to get more character development from a lot of these characters, especially that they bring over from other mediums, because like people don't know who they are. Like, it was very exciting for us to see her last season show up for the first time in live action as fans of her in animation, because we know her essentially 30 some years that we'd been following her in the timeline up until we see her in season 2. Like, we know like everything that she's done up until that point for the most part. Whereas if you're just watching The Mandalorian and you've never seen those animated, you have no idea who this character is and why she's important. And then like you're relying on the show to kind of tell you what you need to know about that character. So there's a drawback of how uh Marvel, or not Marvel, Disney and Lucasfilm are handling the legacy characters in Star Wars, because these are legacy characters at this point. Like Clone Wars is over 15 years old. That's a legacy character. She's been around for years. You got generations of kids that grew up watching her. Like a lot of us watched, Luke, Leia, and Han, and Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme. Like you got a generation of kids that grew up on Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, Rex, Commander Cody, like a bunch of the characters from animation that pop in and out that are now getting their live action debuts. But like, I don't know, it's just weird kind of crossover. Then all of a sudden, there's also the other elements they kind of inject in there as far as Mandalorian culture goes, and the creed and things that go back to before the Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm. Like the whole Mandalorian creed and all of that goes back 30 some years too, but a lot of that's just from comic books and mediums that a lot of people aren't really all that familiar with. And I think Marvel does a better job at it than Star Wars does, as far as explaining their stories and in the backgrounds of these characters. They do have these origin stories that they tell with a lot of these characters that Star Wars has not done yet. Hopefully they will at some point. For the most part, they kind of rely on the hardcore fans to kind of tell everybody, "Oh, this character is important because like it," and it's like, well, we can't do that 24/7. Y'all got to be able to make some movies. You got Disney Plus, like make even if it's just like a short film about Bo-Katan, it can be animated. Just something that gives you a general synopsis of who this character is, why she's important, what she's done up to this point. Who Ahsoka is, what she's done, why she's important, like
the show that Marvel has.
Yeah, like you gotta do that kind of stuff. Like you can't just assume people have consumed all this content. Like it hadn't been readily, like the Clone Wars is just now in recent history getting onto streaming platforms, because all before it was on Cartoon Network, which that predates streaming. So a lot of people who weren't watching the TV show when it was on Cartoon Network and never saw it. It had a short time that was on Netflix. And so if you didn't watch it then, now it's on Disney Plus. They don't really promote it all that much. Like it would be nice if they would run some advertisements every now and then promoting their shows. They need to do the same thing with Marvel, like promote Loki. Like I don't know why they didn't promote Loki more than they did leading up to Quantumania. That would have helped both Quantumania and Loki, in my opinion, because they're so closely related. Like, I don't understand why they don't do that. Like, put together a playlist on Disney Plus of like, Bo-Katan episodes that are very important, and promote that. Promote it on social media. Promote it on any type of platform, so that people will go and watch it leading up to Mandalorian, so they get a little bit of better understanding of who this character is. Because to me, it just feels like they just don't. It's not we need a little bit more on who she is. Like they just kind of threw her in the story and like ran with it. Like,
very postured.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Disney is expecting that everybody's just watching everything, just like we discussed earlier with Loki and What If. People who don't watch those are missing important information, just like people who are just watching The Mandalorian are missing important information about Bo-Katan. And it's up to Disney to share that. There's so much content, and I do wonder if that's a part of the problem. Well, of course, there are things that they could do better to promote it, but also they have thousands of hours of content between all of the shows and the movies.
It's a lot of content.
It's too much content. Like at some point, if they're not going to stop and they're going to continue to produce Marvel films and movies, and they're definitely going to keep going with Star Wars, at some point they have to expect that not everybody is going to be able to watch everything.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars goes back to 1976.
Right.
Like, and there's literally been Star Wars content coming out ever since that year. And although they created Legends, they've been pulling from Legends in a lot of these current stories, but they've not been explaining like where they're getting this material from. Like, it's like, it's so like, how are people supposed to know like why any of this is important that's happening on screen? Like, you're kind of just throwing content in there, and it's going over a lot of people's heads. Like, it's, and even to a minor degree in Andor, there's a lot of stuff that's in the scenes where in the not the antique shop, that there's a lot of props in there that have like very serious like Legends connotations. Like Star Killer's armor is in that shop from the video game. Like there's a bunch of stuff in that shop that is from Legend. There's a Sith and Jedi holocron in that shop. Like you can see it in the background. Like it's a whole bunch of stuff, like a bunch of antique stuff that is from like the Old Republic all the way up to like the Clone Wars. Like it's a bunch of stuff in there that they don't really, you don't see them keying on any of that. Like it'd be kind of say, hey, look, here's a cool thing from Andor, social media posts. This is the such and such from this point in time. Like it would be a nice like short little social media post to kind of help world build a little bit. Stuff like that would be like easy. I mean, there's low hanging fruit. You already have it's not like they're creating content. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they're creating new source material. It already exists. All you got to do is just kind of put it together in like a little neat package and promote it, push it, so people can kind of get as hype as we do as like hardcore fans, like seeing it in the background. Like it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. It's just, hey, this is a cool little Easter egg that we snuck into here. It's not important to the story, but it does have some type of context. Like the back to the episode, like the whole this whole creed that the Mandalorian Din Djarin follows versus the new Neo Mandalorians that kind of sort of led Mandalore all throughout the Clone Wars. Bo-Katan is kind of sort of in between both of those factions. She's not, Death Watch wasn't, they split off from the Watch. They didn't agree with the Neo Mandalorians of this peace trajectory, but they also didn't agree with the hardcore, this is the way, old school version of the Watch. Like they kind of were radical. They were way too radical for the Watch because they wanted to overthrow with force. They wanted to overthrow the pacifists with force. The Watch was kind of like, you know what? If this is how they want to live their life, cool. We'll just stay over here on Concordia. We'll mind our business over here. We'll let them have Mandalore. Like we can coexist peacefully. But like that's why Din Djarin and Bo-Katan don't really have that much interaction, because beforehand, I think they're about this. They should be. I think Bo-Katan is actually older than he is. So, yeah, she definitely is older than he is because he was discovered during the Clone Wars. But like you don't get any of that type of stuff from the TV show. Like it is, you're kind of just, it's too linear at times, following the Mandalorians and Grogu's story, which is fine when you don't have legacy characters that you're injecting into the story. Like once you start injecting characters like Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan and like anybody else that may Luke Skywalker, anybody else that you might show up, you kind of got to start doing some extra stuff to help people bring people up to speed with who these characters are and why they're so important, because all of us fans who are familiar with these characters get excited. Nobody else cares because they don't know who these characters are.
Yeah, just give them 1-2 scenes in the episode show something.
Give her, she deserves like an episode where it can be like her just, you know, talking about, and it could happen. Maybe it'll happen in this show. Like maybe she will have time to sit with Din Djarin and talk about the Clone Wars and like all of her. What's up? That just threw me off. The
Coop Daddy.
Coop Daddy.
Yeah.
You were just talking about Bo-Katan and what she deserves.
Right. So like her, if she got a scene with her, she and Din Djarin talking about like her past and talk about Death Watch, and then we get some flashbacks to the Clone Wars and all of that stuff. Talk about her sister, who was the ruler of Mandalore before she was killed by Darth Maul. Like these, like her backstory is very, very interesting. Like she could have her own show. And how many of y'all did y'all know that Katie Sackhoff also voiced her character in the animation?
I did know that.
Yeah.
Also, Din Djarin probably doesn't even know her history.
That's
like,
what I'm saying.
It would just be important, at least for her to explain it to him. Like, he thinks she's a big deal, but does he really know how big of a big deal she is? Like, he's just seeing her as a friend, but like, she's not just any friend. Like,
she's a princess.
Yeah, like I mean, she is as important as Luke and Leia are to the story. Like she's played a vital role in this story. Like her deal, I mean, she knows her and Ahsoka fought side by side in the Clone Wars. Like at the end of the Clone Wars, they're really good friends. Like that, and that's a very important connection because Ahsoka Tano is the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. Like she and her sister had
he who shall not be named
was in a relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, he named him.
But that's important because it's like her connections run very deep, man. She knows like all these characters. She knows Anakin Skywalker. She knows Obi-Wan. She knows Ahsoka. Like she fought during the Clone Wars. She knows Boba Fett, not directly, but because he's a clone, and she's fought alongside and against clones throughout her life. So like that scene might have gone over some people's heads, I think in the previous season when she, or was that? Yeah, that was in the previous season when she had that like remark to Boba Fett about like, yeah, I've heard your voice like a million times. You're just a clone. Like there's significant, like there's actual a significant meaning to that because she actually has.
I wonder, I would hope they're not, if they're going to wait until the Ahsoka show to do that, because one thing that they've proved, if they can put 2 episodes of The Mandalorian in the Boba Fett show, they can put an episode about Bo-Katan in The Mandalorian. Just,
they ain't doing it.
I don't know, but I would hope that they don't wait until Ahsoka, because you're right, they do have a connection. It would probably be cool to see her and Ahsoka together again on screen, but I would hope they're not going to wait until the Ahsoka show to do that. To at least give her the not to give her screen time with Ahsoka, but to give her the shine that she deserves.
I don't think that we'll have to wait that long, because a lot of the show is going to be spent with the Mandalorians. So it seems like there's going to be time at least for this to happen. Like in the next episode, if they don't have more conversation with each other, like this has got to come up at some point, like who she is. Like she's been hinting at it. She hinted at it in this previous episode, like when she was talking to Grogu, like, hey, like how long, what, I forget what she says exactly, but she said something to the effect of like having fought alongside the Jedi, and she's familiar with the Jedi and their powers, and like she was kind of curious about what he could do. Then that whole fight sequence that she had when she went to rescue Din, like she handled herself very well, but that comes from like years of experience that Din doesn't have. As far as we've seen, like she's got real wartime experience. She's fought in several wars, like so. I, it's weird. I think we got to get that at some point.
After the end of this past episode, y'all think Din completed his mission? Did he bathe in the waters?
Man, if I could,
I think he has bathed, and he should have been redeemed by that. I think he did a little bit more than bathe.
The significance of that entire sequence, though, like, is going to go over a lot of people's heads because that's very significant, especially what you saw in the water.
The little monster sea creature.
That was not a monster sea creature. That was a mythosaur.
Yeah,
that was the
mythosaur.
The mythosaur is the skull and tusk symbol that you see every Mandalorian have on their armor.
Yeah,
that's the skull of a mythosaur. Like Mandalore the First was the first Mandalorian to basically tame one of these dragon mythical creatures known as the mythosaur, and that's how he was able to unite all the clans of Mandalore together into one house. This is how the Mandalorian civilization started, and then a couple thousand years after that, the mythosaur allegedly went extinct. After sometime later, after probably the Mandalorian Wars with the Jedi and the Mandalorians, Tar Vizsla comes along and constructs the Darksaber, and so they rally behind the Darksaber from that point on, because there are no more mythosaur on Mandalore by that time period. So basically, from about 3,000 years prior, or maybe 3,000 years prior to the Clone Wars, the rallying signal for the Mandalorians has been the Darksaber. Now you got a Mandalorian, Din Djarin, who has the Darksaber, and may at some point during this season actually tame that mythosaur that we see in the water. He would be the first Mandalorian.
Has the Darksaber now, right?
No, technically she should.
She gave it back to him?
She gave it back to him.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, she gave it back to him. He put it back on his belt at the end of the episode.
So the mythosaur was the one at the end that with the
eye. That was a mythosaur.
He just swam off.
Yeah. In the living waters, which I figured, I was like, this is probably going to happen. It's probably going to be a mythosaur down there. Like I kind of knew that. I had speculated that might be what we see down there in the waters with when Din gets down there. And I think that they've been leading up to it since season 1 with what's my man, the Ugnaught that had the I have spoken. I forget his name.
Yeah, the old man.
Yeah, the old dude that had the blurg, and he taught Mando how to tame the blurg. Like that was very important. Like that's going to play into this story later, because he's learned to tame, and he even references that while he's teaching Mando how to tame the blurg. Like he talks about the mythosaur. Yeah, Quill.
Oh shoot, Mando might bring all the Mandalorian back.
But that's what I'm saying. Like that was such a significant reveal in the water at that moment. Like this is like, I was freaking out because I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like this is where they're going, because technically if Din can tame the mythosaur, he would be the first and only Mandalorian in the history of Mandalore to both wield the Darksaber and tame a mythosaur. Right. Like he'd literally be the undisputed like champion.
So I have a question for y'all, because we saw Bo-Katan wield the Coop. He froze.
Yeah, he froze.
Coop, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear y'all.
Oh, okay. So we saw Bo-Katan wield the Darksaber in this episode. Well, we saw both of them use it, and it's quite clear that Din is struggling. Do you feel that she will be an ally and help him, or do you think that there's still going to be some struggle for power there?
I think she just needs to keep the dark saber.
I feel the same way.
I think Dan just needs to hand that up. Go ahead, give that up.
Yeah, because
He
she's
tried,
proficient with it.
but she wouldn't accept it. He did try. He tried to hand it to her when he first got it, and she didn't even touch it.
I don't understand.
Yeah, because he tried to hand it to her in the second season, but that's just not how the power. So the significance of that actually goes back to Rebels, because Sabine actually, I'm trying to think. Yes, technically Sabine was the one who won it. No, she didn't even win it from Maul. Maul still. This is where it gets a little convoluted, but she no, not really. I mean, so I'll explain like what her hesitation is. Sabine Wren gave her the dark saber to rule Mandalore. That's not how that's supposed to be passed down. Like, she's supposed to win it in combat. So she essentially broke the code, and she believes that because she broke the code and didn't defeat she didn't defeat Sabine in combat, that she had no right claim to the dark saber. Also, a lot of the Mandalorians believe that, and her winning it back from was Giancarlo Esposito,
Moff Gideon.
Mm-hmm.
She needed to win it back from Moff Gideon so that all the other Mandalorians would honor her claim to it, because she would have rightfully won it in combat, as the legend says. Din beat Moff Gideon in combat, so he is the rightful owner of the darksaber. Technically, because
combat,
he beat him in combat. You don't have to kill whoever it is; you just have to beat them in combat. He yielded, so he was the rightful. Because he yielded, the sword falls under to Din. But technically, we got a major plot hole here that they could possibly plug. But Darth Maul was the last owner to win the darksaber in combat. He killed Pre Vizsla in combat, won the darksaber, then he lost the darksaber. But all because you lose it doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost claim to it. But the caveat there is Obi-Wan kills Maul, so the sword technically falls to Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan was killed by Darth Vader, who was killed by Luke Skywalker. So technically, Luke Skywalker is the rightful owner of the saber if you follow its true line of combat. That's why I'm like this. That's a wild.
I feel like the saber got to be in possession of the defeated.
That's what I'm saying. But they've never explained like how that happens. Like, all they said is that you have to win it in combat. And the last person to rightfully win it in combat was Maul, and he was defeated by Kenobi. Kenobi was killed by Vader. Vader was killed by Luke. So,
but he never used the darksaber in combat.
You wouldn't have to use it in combat. You just have to defeat whoever owns it. It doesn't have to be like somebody could have assassinated Maul with a sniper, and like they would have had the rightful claim to the saber.
Most interesting.
Yeah, that's a bit much. That's what I'm
saying.
Then the Elder Wand nonsense at the end of Harry Potter. Let's just leave that where it is. I don't even want to deal with that.
Yeah. So like
Bo-Katan respects the darksaber so much that she even had it to the side of Din Djarin at the end of the episode when he came to again before they went to the Living Waters. She didn't have it on her hip. She gave it back to him. I just hope that if they're gonna fight it out and duke it for it, I hope she gets it. But if they're not gonna do that, I would at least hope that she can be of support and kind of help him with it. because it's painful to watch him. I wish he would have kept the
I feel
dang.
like she gets it. I mean, she
If
saved his life. You get the dark saber.
well, I mean, technically, he lost claim to it because he lost the little monster thing that captured him. Like if he's because he was captured, he lost. So that the monster that he fought in the cave at that moment had rightful claim to
Being
the
a little
sword.
too technical.
True, but
And she kills that monster. So technically, that line should still she has claim to it.
but she doesn't want it anymore
I
because
know.
that's my thing. It's like, okay, it's very clear she's not interested. So would she at least play the role of support for Din? If Din Djarin is really going to be the Mandalorian to reunite the Mandalorians, bring everybody back together, he's gonna need that, and I would hope that she can at least be that for him.
Not necessarily. Like if he's able to tame a mythosaur, that's all he needs. He doesn't even need the Darksaber at that point because the mythosaur is far more significant than the Darksaber is.
Mythosaurs can they go on land?
In Legends, they could fly, and I believe they could even fly in space in the vacuum.
Oh wow!
Yeah, if I recall correctly, they could travel in the vacuum as well. And then there were these other creatures known as basilisk, which they created these mechanized dropships based on their image with that was basically their warhorse, which instead of like landing like a capital ship and deploy troops like that, they would literally descend by the hundreds of thousands on these basilisk war droids onto their opponent. And that's how the Mandalorians of old conquered. But I don't know. Like I don't know where they're going with this, but like them putting the mythosaur in there like that, I'm very curious to see how that goes because that's a very significant thing within the Mandalorian culture. Like that's far more significant than Darksaber is.
Would Din Djarin know enough of the history to know that?
That part he should know because that would be the Watch would have they would worship the mythosaur. Like because they're following the Watch. The whole code of the Watch basically goes back to the time of Mandalore the First, which is the one who first tamed the mythosaur. So yeah, they should. That the mythosaur is revered, but not only by the Watch, but by every other Mandalorian clan across the galaxy because they all hear these stories about the mythosaur from that have been passed down from generation to generation. Same with the Darksaber, but the like I said, the mythosaur being the mythical legacy creature that has been extinct for thousands of years, allegedly, like that coming back would have way more significance to anybody, more so than the Darksaber has. Because honestly, that could represent like a rebirth of their entire civilization. Because as far as they're concerned, that was the mythosaur embodies the beginning of the Mandalorian people as one culture, united by the one true Mandalore.
I mean, this conversation alone just put a lot more in perspective for me. Now I'm wondering if it's even possible for Star Wars to communicate that. Well, no, they absolutely can.
They have the platforms. That's what I'm saying. Like
they just have to do the work. They have to, because that's insane. I gotta talk to my dad about that. I don't think he got to watch the new episode yet. He's gonna flip. I will report back on his findings.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean that's it, and that's such a like the Mandalorians are such a kind of a niche faction, but they have their own like fandom anyway. So like people who know and have followed the Mandalorians since like their stories began cropping up after with Boba Fett. I think it was an animated TV show or special with Boba Fett where he appeared for the first time, and he's riding what eventually becomes Mythosaur, but that's not how the Mythosaur looks. At current, it's more of a fiercer. That was like a um, what's that? A brontosaurus, essentially. What they had in that animation. That's not what the canonical mythosaur looks like anymore.
I gotta look it up now.
I
Yeah,
look,
it's old. I mean,
I
it's from
have
like I think the
there's a few different
80s.
images of what it looks like in the artwork. There's some that looks like a T-Rex with tusks here, and
Yeah,
then
that's the more if it's got the two tusks coming out the mouth, like that's the more modern interpretation of a mythosaur, the more canonically accurate
but there's no
depiction.
wings on it though.
I see one image where the Mandalorian and Grogu are on top of one riding it.
That's fan art. I was looking at that too.
Okay. Yeah, see that.
I wasn't expecting us to have this this discourse today because the episodes were fantastic. I don't have any complaints as far as what they showed us on screen. It was very exciting to see, but I definitely foresee some issues there. And now that I think about it, I don't know. It's just there's just a bit too much content at this point. Like, not to let them off the hook and say that Disney doesn't have work to do, but for Marvel and Star Wars, they have a problem now that DC is basically just washing away with by rebooting everything, starting with the Flash. Like, now it doesn't really matter what
The
content.
invasion of DC is upon us.
It's definitely they have some work to do. Both, I guess you can say it's a Disney problem because it's happening with both Star Wars and Marvel. They're just not. They're making great content, but they're not sharing it enough.
Yeah, and they're not doing a good job of making those connections between all of the other material that they have. Like,
they've got quantity and quality right now.
And like Marvel, I can understand to a certain degree because they have so many reboots within Marvel, like within on the comic side of things. Like they redo entire runs and reboot entire runs and change like so many times that it's really hard to shuffle through all that to get kind of a more linear cohesive story. Star Wars, on the other hand, has been a linear story. Like, it has a beginning point and a current point, basically, that, and there's never been a reboot. Like, they've never restarted the entire saga.
I think
it's always been a continuation.
They should consider a reboot post episode 6.
I don't think they will. They've already established that they have a whole bunch more stuff that they want to add. I don't ever foresee them rebooting because it would take a lot. It would upset. It would take some failure. Like, it would take a whole bunch of bad reviews.
Force sensitive episode happens in the galaxy that like triggers the timeline, the shift.
They don't have to reboot the galaxy. Like, I've been saying this for years now. Like, they don't have to do that. Like, all they would have to do is just tell a concurrent story to the sequel trilogy and then continue that story beyond the sequel trilogy. Like, you don't have to reboot it. Like, those events can happen, but like, make the galaxy feel like a large galaxy. Like, it's a galaxy. Like, yeah, this can be a massive event that happened within, but it doesn't affect every part of the galaxy. Like, you've got the unknown regions. Like, you've got like a whole side of the galaxy. Like, you've got Chiss space that is vastly unexplored and unknown. You can tell stories on that side of the universe, on that side of the galaxy, that what they're doing with the current timeline feels like that's the direction that they're heading. Like, they're going to continue the story of the Mandalorian and all of the characters that spin off from that, and Ahsoka, and then Ezra, and all those stories will continue beyond the sequel trilogy, and they can just make those the main characters, and then they can just bring in like a Rey and a Finn and inject them into that story that's been established, and they don't have to really touch the sequel trilogy at all. Like they could just, like what they've done with Bo-Katan, they can treat those characters just like that. Like just inject them into this more cohesive, planned out story that makes a lot more sense.
Trilogy, we're just gonna sweep it under the bed.
No, you're technically not sweeping it under the bed. You're just telling a story that happens concurrently to that one in another part of the galaxy, and that now becomes your main universe. Like Skywalker Saga is done. We're now following essentially the legacy of Ezra and Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, Din Djarin. Like that's now your main story. Like this is where you literally have common ground amongst the fan base of people. They really enjoy these characters. Why not run with that? Like that's what's keeping everyone's attention on Star Wars right now. It is The Mandalorian, it is Ahsoka, Rebels, Clone Wars. It is these characters that are basically the ones that are carrying this flag of Star Wars right now. So just run with that all the way through.
Yeah. I need to
then we got Grand Admiral Thrawn like in the Chiss space and like all that stuff that's happening. Like, I mean, like the whole man, you really don't have to reboot it. Like I've always had that issue with Star Wars even prior to the acquisition from Disney. Like the story always felt small because they always go to the same worlds, they always go to the same systems, every conflict happens in the same part of the galaxy, and it never feels like it's a large galaxy. Like, I mean, we're talking about a galactic story. There should be, sure, you have this large central government of the Republic, the Empire, then the New Republic, but there's also other aspects to it. Like you've got the Mandalorians for one, you've got the Chiss, you've got the Hutt cartel, you've got the Black Sun Syndicate from Legends that essentially ran the Outer Rim for basically this time period. Like there was after the Empire fell, the Black Sun took over in the Outer Rim territories, and they had full control along with the Hutts. So like it was basically the Wild Wild West. Like it was a very unruly time period in that part of the galaxy.
I feel like another issue is that not only are they staying within one part of the galaxy, but they keep expanding on stories that we already know the ending of. Like they made an entire show about Andor, a character that we watched die in Rogue One. The show is fantastic, but we already know how the story is going to end, and they're going to keep adding seasons. Are we going to go all the way up to Rogue One? Like, and then that's where there's more and more problems, right? Because not everybody may have seen Rogue One, but people are watching Andor or vice versa. Like, at some point, we have to tell a story that hasn't been told yet. Like a completely new story with a character that we didn't already see die. A lot of, I feel like a lot of Star Wars is retelling an old story in some way.
We're just putting light on different characters. Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean, let's see. To add, at most of the story in Legends Beyond Episode 6 was entirely about the Skywalkers. Like it was like nobody else in the galaxy could ever save the galaxy other than somebody with the last name Skywalker. That was my problem with the Legends from like basically after the Yuzong Vong Wars. Like you had Heir to the Empire with Grand Admiral Thrawn, which took place during the current time period of The Mandalorian. Then after that, you had the Yuzong Vong, which they were this alien species that came from another galaxy that were completely immune to the Force. But in all of these stories, either Luke Skywalker or one of his children or grandchildren were the protagonists. And so like that's what got boring to me, because it was like, yeah, they introduced new side characters and whatnot, but everybody plays second fiddle to the Skywalkers. And in the that's why I kind of gravitated towards the Old Republic, because the Old Republic had a whole bunch of characters. Like every single protagonist was different. There were no legacy. Well, there were a few legacy characters, like the Organas popped up a couple times. There's a lot of characters that popped up from um, Legends, but it made sense because the Organas have a legacy on Alderaan that dates back to the beginning of the foundation of democracy. Like democracy began on Alderaan. So, and the Organas were the first, or one of the first democratic monarchies. So that's that's significant, especially in the time of the Republic. But like you get like a lot of the stuff with the Mandalorians, you get a lot of stuff with the Hutt cartel and the Hutt Empire, the Sith Empire, the foundation of the Jedi, the first Jedi schism, where the Jedi and Dark Jedi split and eventually become the Sith and Jedi. Like it's way more, to me, interesting because you have all these different factions that are opposed and fighting sometimes with and against each other. Possibly, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Thrawn had been cast by the time this was filmed, but I think that Ahsoka will definitely probably pop up, and I'm sure we will get a few name drops of Thrawn. I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Thrawn popped up in this at some point. It might not be Thrawn, but we might see his Star Destroyer with the Chimera. We might see the Chimera in a shot with he's got on the underside of his Imperial Star Destroyer, he's got a mural of a Chimera with the intersecting heads going all the way up to the tip of the nose of the Star Destroyer. Is a very cool, like iconic image of Thrawn, because every time
is that what's on the cover of Ascendancy?
Yeah, that's what's on the cover.
Okay.
And that's why it's in that Dorito shape, because it actually goes on the underside of a Star Destroyer. And when you see it from orbit, that's what you see, is that Chimera image before he bombards you out of existence.
So
bring back planetary bombardments, bro. We don't need super weapons, man. Like drop those Star Destroyers down into orbit and just let them rain absolute hell on whoever's down there, bro. That's a terrifying image. Because like planet killers, right? That's a quick and you probably don't even know what happened. Like it's just a flash and it's over. Like a planetary bombardment, you can have like all of these cannons firing down on you. Like that's far more terrifying to me than like a super weapon.
Side note, because I know we've been on for a while. You don't think it's crazy that they just created a whole bunch of weapons that could take out entire planets? Like, what's the point? Who are you gonna rule over if you kill everybody?
They got a whole
people
galaxy.
Who submit.
I mean, but Star Wars ain't going to check out the whole galaxy. So
and that's what I'm saying. Like it's not like that's another thing though. Like but I appreciated that about the post Return of the Jedi, because there were no more super weapon Death Stars that popped up in the galaxy. And basically it was just threats. It was just these unimaginably sized like forces, like the Yuzong Vong. They just overwhelmed you with like just sheer numbers. Like they were like a horde
in the newer movies.
Yeah, I'm talking in the movies, but I'm talking about in Legends. Like they didn't do that. They went away from that. Because it's dumb. Like it works one time. The shock value is over after the first attempt. The second one was a stretch in Return of the Jedi, but like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? You can't do it 3 times. That's for sure. Like at most you can do it 2 times, but not. Or if you want to do it in a different way, like how they did it in Knights of the Republic 2, when you have like Darth Nihilus he could use the Force to just drain the life force from an entire planet. That's a planet killer, but the way it's executed is much different than Death Star. It's much more terrifying. Much more terrifying.
Oh man, we didn't get to the top 5 DC picks that James Gunn might work with.
It kind of stinks We're only on camera now every other week, so there's a bunch of news that's happening in this 2 week span. But I think maybe next time, instead of starting with the new news, we can start with our special topics and then cover the news afterwards. That way, we get that stuff squared away. Yeah, unless y'all want to do it right now.
I gotta roll it too.
Behind the scenes content on screen. How y'all like it?
Sponsor.
I thought that said 9/11.
That's what I said. I was like, I saw the 911 first. I was like, dang, is it that serious? It's like, this sounds like
a hard cider.
1911 hard cider.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Black cherry flavor.
Also, we should have started the show with this, but thank you to everyone who participated in our game night on Monday. Thank you to Mark and Ebony for hosting it. I was texting Ebony and she let me know that we are going to play Among Us on Friday, March 29th. So please join us. We're going to do it just like we did before. Everybody playing Among Us at the same time in the Discord chat. So please join us. We have a whole lot of fun. We played Fall Guys. We played about 800 rounds and I didn't win one. Not one round. It's ridiculous. And I got to practice so I could redeem myself.
Yeah. The reigning champ is here.
You want to give him your title?
What's your title?
The real boyoing.
Oh man, nah, yeah, he was killing us. Like what'd you end up with? 12?
Well, technically, I had 14 wins.
14 wins. Technically, you have 14 wins. Then there were some
there were early attempts at erasure.
Someone determined that those were pregame wins and they didn't count towards regular season wins, so we had to start over. And
I didn't win on either side, pre or post. Just nothing.
Yeah, so 11 recorded, but 15 in actuality.
But we look forward to playing with y'all. So please join us on Discord so that you can keep up with that. They are going to keep all of the game nights in the Gumbo calendar. We should start adding the shows to the calendar too. That tool is there. So if you ever want to know what's going on, we're going to start updating the calendar so you can, be abreast of everything that's going on in Gumbo.
Yeah. And also
calendar right here. Go check it out.
Oh, they all in there?
They all in there.
Nice.
YouTube has been teasing for the last couple of years some more integrations and more live streaming tools and support. Hopefully some of that stuff comes soon. That will definitely help us with plugging some of these events while we're doing live streams, because we can talk about them and drop them easily into the chat if we have some better Discord integrations on YouTube. But until that day comes, we'll continue to add drop links and do whatever we can and continue promoting. You join our Discord where you can keep up with a lot of our content and everything else that we do off camera, because we are very active off camera throughout the week, every day, talking to everybody about various topics. So join us there for sure. And make sure you if you are in Discord, definitely check the threads on the chats, because we do have spoiler threads for certain shows, so we are not flooding your alerts with spoilers when you don't want them.
Yes,
but
I didn't watch Last of Us until last night, so I now get to join the Last of Us spoiler thread, and I get to rant.
So yeah, it's good because you don't get notifications until you check in with the app. So definitely keep an eye out on those. All right, Imani, wait, how did our the camera order get out of alignment? There we go.
Was I over there the whole time?
Yeah, I don't know how long you were over there. But anyway.
Well, as always, thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please join us on Discord. We are talking about these things all day, every day, all the time. March Madness is about to come up, so that's about to be a new thing on the channel. Please, I already said dislike this video. I already said subscribe. Oh, the link to our Discord is in the box down below. Also, if you would love to support us, please buy us some coffee. Follow us on social at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch at Certified Gumbo. All right, I've had it and I lost it again, but I'm gonna get it back. Anything else, y'all?
That's it. That's perfect. Thanks for joining.
Yep. And as I always say, peace, love, blessings, and may the force be with you always.